Chicken brown cow. Hey, listeners, thanks for tuning back in for another episode of the Wisco Weekly podcast. I am so excited. I am on site right now at the Las Vegas Convention Center for the start of the expo of NADA, the National Automobile Dealers Association 2018. And my guest for today is Jim Decater of Dealer Car Rentals. Jim, thanks for coming on the show.
Well, thanks for having me. Looking forward to talking with you.
Now, this is your first time at NADA.
It is.
Have you been to the show before?
I have never actually attended, but I'm very familiar. Been in the business for a long time.
I think one of the things that's most impressive to me when I walk through the doors of the expo is you always hear about how the automotive industry is this billion-dollar industry, and then all of a sudden when you walk through these expo doors and you see these huge setups, that's where you see where all the money's going.
No, it's crazy. Yeah, there's a lot going on in there, no question.
Well, so Jim, you have a business called Dealer Car Rentals, and so I thought the first thing I'd like to hear from you is, especially in the light of ride sharing and how that is kind of the future, I do still believe that, especially actually the business you have, that there's definitely some immediate relevance. So if you could paint for me a picture of what the car rental business is for you.
Okay. Well, I think more to what you're talking about as far as the future of the rental. So like, and I think you made a very good point with the ride sharing. The technology has changed. So with the changes in technology, then therefore a lot of the business models are changing. So what we're trying to do is take advantage of the new technologies and incorporate them into the traditional way of doing car rentals, and kind of modify it to fit what people are now getting used to doing. With the new generation, they're getting used to doing everything on the phone, and we're trying to accommodate that and make things a lot simpler and easier.
So that's part of the booking process then, I presume, of tell me how this works then. So you partner up with the dealership. How does then a customer all of a sudden, let's talk about from the customer side of how a customer books a rental.
Sure. It's it's web-based or app-based. They can get on their computer. They can go do through their phone. It's a membership situation where they would go ahead and become a member. We ask a few questions that we have to ask, with regards to, credit cards, name, address, phone number, all the basic stuff. It doesn't take, a couple minutes, but and then they go through and decide where they want to go. The beauty of this program is that you can use it for travel, or you can use it for like on demand. So if you need a car for a few hours, you can mobilely rent the car, go in remotely, access the car, use the car, bring it back, and then end the rental. You don't have to do any paperwork. You don't have to see anybody. You just get in the car, you go, you come back, it's done.
Yeah, I was reading on your website that as long as somebody downloads the app, once they show up at a dealership, it's a matter of the car's already ready for them. They unlock the car through the app, and then they return the car, and is there like a checkout button then on the app, and then that closes out the deal?
Exactly. You start your rental, you get in, of course you check for damage and that sort of thing, and make sure that everything's okay, and then you use it for the pre amount of time that you wanted to. Of course you can extend it if you need to. When you come back, you park the car, you end the rental, the car locks, it's remotely done, and you're done. It's charged to your credit card. You don't have to see anybody. It's all remotely done.
How do you... I'm always curious of the technology then, because you're essentially overlaying your technology over a dealership operation. So in the case of unlocking a car, how are you able to take a car from a dealership, take your mobile app and platform all together, and then simply show up at the car and then it unlocks?
Well, there's hardware that's been installed on the car. Obviously you have to have some hardware there so that they can communicate. So that's all done through our development and our technology, but yeah, there's hardware on the car that allows us to access it. We'll know how fast it is. The GPS will know it'll unlock and lock, and we can even immobilize the car if we need to. So as far as a dealership being concerned about a car being taken, we know where the car's at all times. We can if we feel that something's going funky that's not supposed to happen, we can turn the car off. Not while it's driving, of course, but so yeah, we know where that car's at and what's going on with that car
so
at all times.
There's some nice safety and insurance
Absolutely.
protections. Which
a lot
you
of
came from the insurance
industry. Came from the insurance
so
industry. This was focused around what I know insurance companies are looking for. So, and I know what dealerships are looking for because I got a background in that as well. So it's kind of a beautiful marriage that I think clicks all the boxes. So it should make the customers happy and the dealers happy, and of course, in all business dealings, if you got a win-win-win, then everybody's happy.
Well, let's actually take a step back here because at a very micro level, we're talking about dealer car rentals, but at a macro level here, obviously you being one of the founders, the owners of the business, and you came from the insurance industry. How did you come to formulate this particular business?
Well, it was a matter of my partner, who has been in the rental business for a number of years, was looking for a way to replicate himself, and he's been looking, and then with technologies changing, like we discussed earlier, we were able to kind of refit some of the technologies and approach. Of course, we're in Seattle, so you can't throw a rock without hitting a developer, and just spent a couple of years putting this thing together and making sure that everything was all right and everything was the way it needed to be, and to make sure that insurance companies were willing to back it, and finding a program where we felt like the dealers would be on board and understand that this is an easy way for them to make some extra money.
And we're going to actually get to that in a second. Then, so at the dealership level, then how does the program work for a dealership in terms of what cars they are selecting to be part of this program?
Right. Well, that's a good question. The traditional the traditional rental situation, they usually use new cars. One of the reasons a lot of dealerships, in the research that I had done, where the dealerships didn't want to be involved because the depreciation is so steep on a new car. So the used cars made more sense with regards to that. But on the other hand, from an insurance point of view, so there's the sweet spot where you want to have cars that are not new, but not overly old. So there'd be kind of those cars that are, between, maybe 15,000 miles and 70,000 miles.
Okay.
But then your standard, what you consider standard rental cars, and as things grow, I mean, you're going to have your SUV. We have your economy, your standard, your SUVs, and so we'll have the whole mix. Whatever you need.
Is there within a dealership? Let's say that dealership has, let's say they have 100 used cars in inventory. Then, are you saying that they should allocate 10%? Is it kind of like a free for all that depending on availability? How does that setup work then, so that the customer, from the time they select what car they want to the time it goes to the dealership, so that they can process it by the time the customer picks it up? How does?
Well, like we talked about before, there has to be hardware set on there. So there needs to be a fleet, so that the dealership would say, okay, and we would start off with 5-10 cars, whatever the dealership feels they want to start with, and then let demand determine how many cars are in the fleet. The beauty is you can take the hardware off at any time, and you can sell the car whenever you want. So it's not like they're completely dedicated, but it makes more sense to keep it in the fleet for a while.
Is this like a flash done to the OBD then, or?
Well, it's hardwired. There's more to it than that, because we don't want people just to be able to take it out. So it's hardwired so that it's installed. So there's a process.
Okay. All right. So then, dealership making money off of this, I think that's always going to be like the aha moment for a dealership, right? It's like always
We're not doing it for fun.
Yeah, right. At the end of the day, it's cool for them to provide these rentals,
right?
But at the end of the day, of course, if they're looking to monetize, any avenue they can get to monetize is what they're looking to do. So how does the whole monetization work of this rental car program?
Well, we're going to be able to offer. I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. Value is typically where a lot of decisions are made. So we plan on getting the customers, because we're going to be able to offer them more car for less rate.
Okay.
So from the customer's point of view, it's a good fit because they'll get more for less. So with regards to the dealership, they're going to be able to rent the cars that are normally just sitting there that may not be providing revenue. And of course they could sell them too, but they still can, so they're not losing anything there. we're going to be creating revenue based on how many rentals they get, and
and so if I'm looking at a Honda Accord rental, how much, as a customer, am paying, and how much then could a dealer essentially make?
So you want to know how much money can a dealer make?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
Well,
for as much as you'd like to disclose,
right.
I mean,
and it's a very difficult question, but I'll give you the best answer I can, which I also talk about on the website. But you're typically going to look at, and it depends on whether you're doing more hourly rentals. It depends on whether you're doing more long-term rentals, because the rates are going to be different. If somebody's going to rent a car for 3 weeks, the rate is a lot less than if somebody's going to rent it for 3 hours.
Yeah.
So if they do a lot of hourly rentals, if they're located in an urban area where they're doing a lot of hourly, they'll make more. If they're doing it where they're just doing long term, they'll make less. But it's a lot easier because they don't see the car for 3 weeks, so that's okay. But anyway, long story short is what we say on our website is you can expect to make $700-800 per car per month.
And again, of course, depends on the time of how long that car's rented for.
Right,
Yep.
but that's a good ballpark to use. And then we use the term of about 30 cars would be the average fleet. You wouldn't start off with 30, but you could get to 30, and that's a very realistic number. I hate to say this, but even realistically, it's probably more. But I don't want to overpromise, under-deliver. So at 30 cars, fleet of 30 cars at $700-800 a month per car, you're going to make an extra $250,000 a year. For really not using much of your resources and not having, you don't have to hire people. It's already, they don't even have to see the customers. They just need to have the car ready for the next rental.
So one particular scenario I was thinking about that, and I don't know if this is kind of more left to the dealer to figure this out, or if this is also part of how your program is pitched and understood and operated by the dealer. But as someone who formerly sold cars, one of the things that I often was asked was, "Hey, Dennis, could I? A 30-minute drive wasn't good enough for me. Like, can I get the car for 4 hours? Can I get it over the weekend?" And of course, I go to my managers like, "Hell no."
Yeah, right.
Because like you said,
insurance
devalues the car, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So now, of course, we're talking about used cars now, not new cars. But even with the used cars, is this something that a dealership can almost then extend? Then, I mean, of course, they could probably extend that, but is that has that been worked out at all?
Absolutely. We've got so many options that you can use. So yeah, you could. This work great as a loaner car, or that you can use you for extended test drives. As long as it's in the fleet, obviously, because you have to have the hardware on there. But it's as long as you're a member, you just sign them up, and then they can rent it, and we're going to have promotional codes so that they can. The dealer, we can determine how much, if anything, they want to charge them to do it. So there's a lot of flexibility.
It's interesting. Yeah, you can almost like use then the promotional code as like a form of advertisement that is, hey, customers, come visit our dealership and use this rental code to check out some of our cars. And I don't know, I presume that's not necessarily part of your business model, is to use the rental program so as to sell cars. This is more as accommodations and concierge services.
And certainly a dealership could certainly do that. Of course, if they're giving it away for free, they're not going to make any money. But on the other hand, there's many dealers out there right now that have loaner programs that they use, that they're losing money on. This is an alternative where they can maybe charge a minimal amount, get them into the system, or just instead of giving it to them, rent it to them for a very reduced rate. That's totally up to the dealer, and each one is going to be different.
And again, I think that's probably one of the more interesting things about it, because you had mentioned the service loaners and dealers losing money off of that, and certainly it doesn't help when you have the manufacturers that are putting this pressure on the dealership to essentially, sell cars. And one of the tricks that dealerships do is they'll turn a new car into a service loaner, so it gets it out of their queue there, and all of a sudden it looks like they're doing well, but yet they still have the service loaner, this depreciating asset that's not doing anything for them. They were forced to put it in there, and then now there's actually the ability for your program to be instituted and make some money off of that. Finally.
Absolutely. No, that's absolutely
So you're based
options.
In Seattle,
yes,
or the company's based in Seattle. Was there a particular other than your location? Was there any other strategic reason why you were based in Seattle and launching this program?
Well, no, that's just where we were at. and like I say, you can't throw a rock without hitting a developer in the Seattle area, so it just, so yeah, that's where we're starting. This is our first
show here.
looking to go countrywide. So and that's the other beautiful thing about this is that and reasons why dealerships probably didn't get involved in the past is that it's hard for one individual dealership to create and market for their dealership. What we're going to do is try to create like a McDonald's kind of a business model where we're going to have national branding. You're going to have dealerships all over the country where an end user will know what to expect no matter where they're at renting a car. So they'll know what kind of cars they're going to be getting. They'll know what kind of experience they're going to have. So there's some value there.
Yeah, I'm curious actually. So you had mentioned McDonald's. What other businesses did you take a look at so as to take the best parts of those businesses and then apply where relevant to dealer car rentals?
Well, what you had mentioned at the very beginning with the ride share, where the whole idea of getting on your phone, getting a car and ending it, and not having to do any paperwork, not having to do any not having money exchange hands. So that that kind of plays into it pretty good too, because that's something that appeals to a lot of people. You don't have to. I was going to tell you a story that happened to me. This is a true story here. It happened a year and a half ago. Went to Orlando, and prior to that, like most people, I got on the computer and I said, okay, I'm going to be in Orlando for 4 days, and I'm going to need a car. And I went and I found one that I thought the rate was pretty good, and I went and I rented reserved the car. I get there, and I go down to where all the rental cars are, and I mean there's all the national brands, and I'm looking for this one that I rented from, and I'm going, well, where's this one at? And I go, oh, it's outside. You got to get on the shuttle, and it takes you off site. So okay, that's not what I thought, but no big deal. The rate's good. So we waited there. They said it comes every 20 minutes. We must have waited a half hour, and finally got on there. There's a few other people with us, so then we go 20 minutes to the place. So now we've got maybe 45 minutes in there. We haven't even gotten to the place yet. Now we're at the place, got to wait in line, go through, do all the paperwork. So it probably literally took us an hour and 15 minutes to be in our car and get on our way. An hour and 15 minutes. It was a very frustrating experience. Normally I'd say, how many cars do you think were in that fleet? You'd think, for that experience, you'd think, there were 1,500 cars in that fleet.
I was going to say something way less than that. I mean, I was going to overshoot and say 30. But
right. No, 1,500 cars were in that fleet. And this is the experience that people did. And that's why I went back, and I didn't want to, a 30-car fleet. I'm looking at, of course, it's Orlando, heavy tourist area. So when I tell a dealership that they can expect at least a 30-car fleet, it can potentially be way more than that. Because if you're going to have a 1,500 car fleet with that kind of experience, I can't imagine what you'd have with the experience that we're going to provide for the end user.
Yeah, so I see. So it's an experience like that where you're minimizing the frictions in essentially an hour in what you said, 15 minutes?
We can get somebody in the car and on their way within 15 minutes probably. Of course, it depends. I mean, I hate to overshoot, but right. Circumstances.
So I think one of the things I'm most curious about is, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong or help me understand this better, how does educating customers that and perhaps prospects, someone like yourself who's flying into Orlando, coming from Seattle, how does one begin to get educated that a dealership offers rentals?
Right, and that is going to be the next step right now. First of all, we got to have the dealerships, right? So that's the first phase, which is what we're doing right now, is getting the dealerships so we have the cars out there, and then of course the marketing will come in, and we've got a whole plan. We're going to do Facebook and Google and email, and so we've got a whole plan on how to, of course, dealerships have their whole email bases. They're already customers.
Right.
So we're going to be, try to take advantage of the relationships that they've already got. So we've got a whole plan in place on educating the customers and letting them know that this service is out there and that it's something that they should probably check into.
Yeah. And are you in any stores right now?
We've got a couple stores in Seattle that we're going to be putting online probably next week.
Okay, and that'll be your kind of first.
Our pilots, if you want to call it that. We've gone through, we've been testing, but we want to make sure before we roll it out, completely, that everything's up to snuff.
Is there anything along the way in terms of instituting the pilot that you've already started to kind of tweak about the program?
Oh, I think there's probably going to be tweaking continually.
Sure, right, yeah, of course, yeah, constant adaptation.
Yeah, exactly. No, but we're, like I said, we've been in the business. We kind of know, so we've gone through every scenario that we can possibly think of, and so we think we've got it pretty well dialed in.
So a couple more things then. So on one hand, when a customer submits their information to sign up, you're collecting kind of general information, name, address, credit card, birth date,
driver's license.
Is it still the case? I know this is the case in California. I don't know if it is in other states, but do you have to be 25, or is that more state policy?
No, we're going to go 21. 21
Okay.
is the minimum age.
Okay, so 21. So the customer submits their information. There's also the hardware that's plugged into the car that you can see where the car is going. Is any of that, is there either currently or in the future any of that data that is going to help the dealership in some capacity?
They're not going to really have access to that information.
In terms of reports, though, is there?
There's going to certainly be reports with regards to the rental aspect and how many, which cars are being rented on, and how much, and what their utilization rate is, like how many days are being rented, and that sort of thing. But with regards to personal information, that's
right now. The utilization is interesting. I wonder what is there anything profound about the utilization that a dealer could use?
Well, only in that'll determine how big their fleet is. I mean, if your demand is more than the cars you have, then you need to have more cars. So, and of course there's going to be fluctuations with regards to the season. Obviously spring and summer and is going to be heavier than the winter time. Also, there's if you've got the Final Four at some, you're going to have a lot of rentals. If you're going to have the Super Bowl, you're going to have a lot of rentals. So there's a lot of things that will determine what your fleet size is, and the reports will help determine that.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Jim, how can people find you?
Well, dealercarrentals.com.
Dealercarrentals.com. Check it out. It's currently being implemented in the Seattle area, but you guys are ready to get deployed anywhere.
Oh yeah, exactly. Like I say, we've prior to coming to the show, we have like an e-booth, and we've already had a number of people have favorited our booth. So there's a good buzz right now. I mean, I've had a lot of people that I've had other companies call us, and so there's a lot of interest in what we're trying to do.
Great, good. Well, Jim, best of luck to you. Wish you all the best here. Is there anything else you'd like to mention?
No, I appreciate the opportunity to educate everybody on what we're trying to do, and look forward to seeing lots of people.
Like I said, I'm a fan of it. I think it's a pretty niche, genius type of service that has somebody on the front line of sales who constantly gets barraged with these requests, and hey, I'd like to take out that car, and of course they can't. So I think a program like this that's one of the areas I think it could be great. And then certainly, if you do have a good relationship with the dealer, like I do, if the more services they offer, the great. It's less of a headache for me to think about other things I need to do.
Right.
So.
And this is very turnkey and very simple. I mean, we're trying to make it as easy. Coming like you, I know how dealers think, and the easier it is for them, then the more likely they're apt to do it. So we tried to make it as simple as we could. So
cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Well, Jim, thanks very much for being on the show. Listeners, please tune in for another episode of the Wisco Weekly podcast. You can always follow us on Facebook and Twitter, Wisco Weekly Pod. And as always, rate, review, and subscribe. Cheers. Pros, lachaim, kipish, nastravi. Salud to the customer experience.